guys, Grimtrigger here. So if you've been following me on social media, you know that the best part of collecting for me is actually posing action figures. So I thought I'd try out a new segment on my channel, focusing primarily on just posing action figures, primarily Transformers. And what better figure to start with than the iconic Optimus Prime. So in this video, I'd be focusing on the Earthrise mode of Optimus Prime, specifically the version from Netflix. And the only reason I wanted to focus on the Netflix version is because it does come with his iconic blaster as well as some melee accessories. So we should be able to cover a whole slew of like posing options and such with this. Of course, if you don't have the Netflix version, you have the other versions, but you do have some melee weapons or some weaponizers, those work out well as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's start this video with articulation on Earthrise Optimus Prime. Okay, so the other reason why I started with Earthrise Optimus Prime is because he does have a lot of good working articulation, which will give us a lot of options on posing. So on the head, he has a ball joint. He can do the physical poses, turn left and right all the way. His arms are very mobile, turns all the way around, goes all that way out. He does have that a butterfly joint, which I do use extensively. He does have a swivel, 90 degrees, more than just about 90 degrees there. Swivel on the wrist, opening hands, which is good for some expressive poses as well. Does have a waist swivel. Couldn't turn all the way, but that's enough, I guess, for most purposes. The leg can go all the way out, hindered going back, but for most poses you don't really need the leg to go back. All the way out, swivel at the top, very deep knee joint, which I really like, as well as ample ankle tilt. So yeah, really good posability on this guy. Now, in terms of negatives, there is just one big negative that I have on this guy, and that's the overall proportions on the upper body. So as you can see, the leg hinge is here as opposed to a bit lower, which you'll see on the Siege version. It's not too bad. It does give him a bit of mobility, but it just makes the proportions a little bit off-putting. The other, and I guess the more egregious problem, is how much his chest is extended. So you can't really have him, posing his arm around his chest, which prevents you from doing a lot of the dual wielding poses with the rifle. But no, that's not too bad. I think we can work with that. Now, starting with the basic pose, for maybe 90% of you guys, I can see you posing your Optimus Prime in a stoic pose on your shelf. Maybe you don't have space, or maybe, it's just simple to make it that way. Simple suggestions, right? If you're just gonna pose him in a stoic pose on your shelf, just like that, a few adjustments can actually make him look a lot better. So let's leave the weapon out first. As you can see, just standing straight up. What I do is I put him in a little bit of an A pose, right? And then make sure the feet are flat on the ground. Move the elbows a little bit, and then swivel the hips a little bit. So that's not a lot of changes, but it gives him a little bit more of a natural look, as opposed to just having him standing all the way straight. You can even be a little bit more creative and have him in a bit more like standing pose like that. So it still doesn't take up a lot of space on your shelf, but it gives him a little bit more dynamism, if that makes sense. Now, just to add to this, you can store his weapons in this mode. So if you want him to be wielding his axe and shield, you can probably store his weapon at the back. Most of you will probably store it like this, which I guess is okay. or maybe even like this to keep it a little bit flat, which I don't mind, but you know, for a more dynamic look, I believe they put that peg there for a reason, and the reason is so that he can wield his, or he can store his gun like that. So I know that might not be as natural for an Optimus Prime, but you know, it could give him the option of like, oh, I want to grab my rifle from the back, right? So it's a bit more natural way. And then we can extend that by putting on the shield and the axe. So again, not many changes, won't take a lot of space on your shelf. Even put the shield like that. See, won't take a lot of space on your shelf, but makes him look a little bit more dynamic. Maybe extend the arm like so, right? So it's like he's ready for battle, waiting for someone to attack him with his shield and an axe on the ready. Now alternatively, you might want him holding his gun, in which case you want to store these guys. So unfortunately, you don't have a lot of space at the back to store both, but you can probably store the shield on the same port at the back. I don't usually store the weapons straight down. I put them on an angle just to make them a bit more dynamic looking. Now, since there's no other place for this, you can actually have the option of having this like a secondary shield, maybe. That works. Or what I prefer personally is have him dual wield, one axe and one gun, which also works. Now let's try a couple of poses with this as a base. So one option would be you want him posed firing his gun. So what you'll do is you'll have his axe at the ready, okay? Have the legs splayed out. So I always have the legs splayed out, and then have him shoot his gun. If you want to use his butterfly joints, it gives a bit more dynamic look as well. So you know, tilting the arms back a little bit goes a long way. See how I have the elbows a little bit bent, so I don't have, you know, any of his limbs just going straight down. So meaning, look around you, anyone you see, there won't be anyone who has his limbs just straight down. So it's not really a natural look, right? Now another option would be him holding his axe. So maybe he just slashed his axe, in which case you want the bending knee forward and have him slash his axe. So you can have him slashing his axe forward and have his gun at the ready. Or even slashing it backwards, which is a bit more dynamic. And have his gun splayed out a similar way. So yeah, lots of good options with this piece. Now for me, I actually see Optimus Prime as a bit of a protector. So while, you know, he doesn't really have a shield aside from the movies, like he doesn't really wield the shield most of the case, but I like to see him as a sort of like a Captain America sort of defender figure as opposed to an attacking figure. So I really like the idea of him having his shield at the ready in front. So make sure you have the front leg bent, bracing for impact, right? And you can either have him have his gun at the ready, or even now I'd like to have him shooting his gun at the same time, but it's really difficult with the protruding chest. That's probably the best that we can do. Now you can use, if you have blast effects, you can use blast effects. So I know that we usually use this for like shooting, but this can actually work as impact points as well. So that could be an impact point, right? A smaller impact point there. It does really look good on your shelf. Now what about flight stands? So I don't really have a lot of flight stands. I plan on buying one, but I did get this from the if I remember correctly, from the Black Widow set, deluxe Black Widow set from the Black Widow movie. That can work in a pinch. You can put his leg there, but ideally you'd like a flight stand that would work with those culo ports, those butthole ports that each of these transformers, at least more recent transformers, usually have. So let's try putting him in a quick flight pose. So we have the iconic pose from the 1986 movie where he actually leaps and just shoots. Or was it the other leg? I think it was this leg. So you can easily recreate it. Use the butterfly joints as well for more dynamism, right? Maybe splay out the toe a little bit, not too much. And then try to finagle that flight stand. Now it will be a lot easier with the port, but if you want to work with what you have and this is the only thing you have, you can always, in a pinch, just have him doing that. So just connect it on the leg, and that works out pretty well, I think. And explosion parts from the base of the stand actually helps sell the look as well. So yeah, maybe have him shooting his gun. Let's use these two blast effects. Not really secure. Let's try just this one. Maybe this. I think his gun's not really secure, or the port. It's not really secure. But yeah, like in a pinch, you can actually do this pretty quickly. Now, the last thing I wanted to cover was, you know, the iconic superhero landing pose. Now, first things first, not just because the figure has a lot of articulation doesn't mean he can pull off a superhero landing pose. And the reason I'm actually wanting to cover this right now is I see a lot of posts on the internet of them trying to finagle a superhero landing pose on specific figures, and it just doesn't look good. It just looks odd. So for example, let's see if we can do it here, right? Now he does have the double jointed knee, which works well with superhero landing poses, but he doesn't have, first off, his arm is a bit short, and secondly, his leg doesn't go past this one, and he doesn't have ab crunch. So it's really hard to pull off one. I've seen people do this, and you know, that just doesn't look nice. You wouldn't see superheroes doing that. That is like a no-no. If you want to pull off a superhero landing pose, if you can't do it with the leg almost straight, then it just doesn't look good. Best if it's straight. So what I'd recommend is more along the lines of maybe this, which just doesn't look good. But the other bit is you do have a shield, so you can probably have him do a pseudo superhero landing pose, but have him land with his shield, and that looks a bit more convincing, right? Maybe have him hold the axe as well, so it's like he attacked someone on the ground pounded with his shield. Or you can also do it the other way around and ground pound using your axe. Actually helps a little bit if you unfold that and give him a bit more waist movement. Doesn't hurt the pose at all. So see how I still have the legs straight, but I still have the feet flat on the ground. I have this feet all flat on the ground, right? And have the axe as close to the ground as possible. So maybe tilt that forward or something. Or I think that's okay as well. It's not on the ground, but it's close enough. I'll bend the elbow a bit. So yeah, it's not your usual or default superhero landing pose, but it works. It works in a pinch, right? Like he jumped up and landed on the ground with this axe. Looks good and doesn't look like it's forced or anything. Okay, so let me leave you with this pose. This is how I pose him on my shelf, just because I have very limited shelf space, just like each and every one of you guys probably. Very simple. All of his weapons are on him. He still looks dynamic and stoic at the same time. Really nice way of storing him. Now, what do you think of the video? Is this something that's helpful for you guys? If yes, let me know in the comments. Also, do you have a specific figure or set of figures that you want me to give the same treatment? Let me know. I collect most of the Studio Series and the War for Cybertron figures. I also have a lot of the Titans Returns figures as well. So if it's a figure that I have, and a lot of people ask for it, I'll be happy to do a little bit of this kind of video for those figures as well. So let me know down in the comments. As always, this has been Grimtrigger, and this has been the awesomely poseable Earthrise Optimus Prime. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.